What's up, everybody? Welcome to TeslaFix. Today we have another big topic because we've heard everything in the news about Elon Musk having a problem with his compensation package, which got revoked. Then we also have a lot of noise about Elon's politics and everything, and the Tesla stock is crushing right now, and now it went up a bit again. So a lot of confusion in the market right now. People kind of frustrated. But now let's take a look at the factories actually, and look at the production numbers, and look at every factory kind of, and look what's happening there, because that's the big thing for Tesla. How much do they produce? Is it still working? Are they pumping out their cars? What's happening there? That's why I have a very special person here. And of course, when we talk about factories, we have to talk with Future Arza, formerly known as MyTeslaWeekend. And here he is. Hi, Brian, and thanks for being on the channel again. Here's Future Arza, the big rebranding here. Yeah, Brian, I'm glad you're here because, of course, we have to touch grass or touch base or touch concrete. I don't know what term
I think it's
should we
touch
use?
cloth. You can ask your friends across the channel there. I'm pretty sure that's what they'll tell us to do, is engage in that sort of behavior. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss with the factories. There are a lot of factories and there are a lot of questions. And, of course, we've got answers on that. I'm happy to start anywhere you like.
At first, maybe we can talk a little bit about Model 3 Fresh, because I own a Model 3 Highland in Europe, but that's not a surprise because it's launched here before the US, but now finally the US has their share of the Model 3s, the refreshed ones. So maybe you can tell us something about the Fremont factory, because they are pumping out the Model 3s for the US, which is pretty interesting. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So we've seen some skepticism that the numbers are going to be super strong out of Fremont this quarter because of the retooling of the line. Now, when the 3 refresh happened in China, I predicted in advance that they would do something that I have never seen a car company do before, which is take down not all the lines, but one at a time. And that is what they did. So you could get a long range and I think a standard range, but not a performance. The performance was still the original design. And they did that so that if there was any problem during the changeover, it wouldn't destroy the quarter. And we saw with the S and X, which are made on only one line in Fremont, when they stopped to retool that, it was nothing but headache. Something went wrong along the way. We don't know what. I would love to hear an answer on that. I have plenty of theories, but in Shanghai, they did one line at a time, got it up to speed, and then they can focus on the next line. And it looks like in Fremont, they have done the same thing. From what I can tell, there are still some of the originals and some of the new ones coming out side by side from 2 different lines. That minimizes the impact. In Fremont, they make mostly Model Y. They make some S and X, and then they also make a lot of Model 3. Well, if you're 60-40 between Model 3 and Y, and you only take down one line, the maximum impact for the quarter is 20%. And and as we know from Tesla, every factory they have has a little bit of room for improvement all the time. And we saw that in China. When we expected very weak numbers, we saw pretty strong numbers. That was very encouraging. So on the Model 3 changeover, it appears to have gone pretty painlessly. We're seeing them in showrooms all over the country. People are starting to take delivery. People are getting test drives who want them. I've had a test drive in one a week or so ago. I was offered another test drive this weekend at a different location nearby. And on the 18th, I'm going out for one in Portland, where they will also be doing test drives for all kinds of us who want to drive it one more time just to get the experience. So this gives a lot of opportunity for a smooth, seamless, painless transition. And I think Fremont's numbers are not going to be that bad, even though Q1 is historically the weakest quarter for auto sales. Summer's the big time. End of year, you get a little push, but Q1 is historically weak.
Yeah, that sounds promising, at least. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that they switch over when they retool and just keep it, because then, I mean, it would be horrible if they, okay, it doesn't work, but now we have retooled all our lines and now we have to halt production, which Tesla will never do. So on that note, maybe you can tell us a little bit about also, because you talked about the performance variant, the Model 3 performance variant, or the Model 3 Fresh Plaid, how you could call it, or something like this. Have you heard something about that, about factories tooling for this kind of vehicle? Is it something like this going to also be produced there? Or what do you think?
What we've seen is a interesting badge on some test vehicles. And it's not a plaid badge. You have to actually go back to Spaceballs and see the logo is ludicrous. So it would be a ludicrous edition Model 3 is what we believe is in the works. But boy, does that narrow the differentiation between the Refresh 3, which is an S Mini, and the S itself, which is now a plaid, is like 90,000 US. It's quite affordable for an absolute beast of a race car. It is very fast. It is ridiculous. It is beyond ludicrous. It is plaid. So that's all I've heard is that rumor and us having seen some badges out there, which could be misdirection. It could be a head fake, but I don't think it is. That's not something Tesla generally does. When they do a fake out, they do something a lot less subtle. Like, do you remember how they labeled the Model Ys when they first arrived in Germany for testing? What they did to camouflage it?
No.
They put a sticker on the side that said, not a Model Y. And,
good. Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, why should anybody think differently then? Yeah.
Yeah, it looked an awful lot like a Model Y with a sticker on the side, but, it's illegal to print stickers that lie. So there you go.
That's true. Okay. Now we have the answer. Perfect.
Now you have the answer. And that should catch us up on Fremont. I don't think there's anything else exciting going on. I expect S and X volume to struggle as they have since the not very refreshing refresh. I expected more. The Highland refresh on the Model 3, I think, was a big change. It was 50% new parts. It's ventilated seats. It's, as you know, a much quieter interior. It is, the sound system is measurably better. I can't tell the difference because it's already, the Model Y sound is already at such a high level that it's just fantastic, but it is an awfully good car and they didn't even jack up the price, which is amazing.
They have now 17 speakers instead of 15 speakers, so that's the big difference. But yeah, the sound system is awesome. I can really relate to people that say, "Oh, it's such a great car." Yeah, it's a very good car. I can tell you that. But I never owned an EV before, so I'm super biased now because everything is from the future now, and this is my benchmark for an EV now. So I can never own an EV that doesn't have ventilated seats. God damn it! I need those.
You should get a Renault Twizy because they're completely ventilated throughout.
Because they don't have doors, actually.
No. So there you go. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, and it's not raining in Europe. That's a good thing. So
it's like they say, it never rains in Europe.
That's a big, that's the saying, I think. So, okay, jumping. Oh, one thing. Yes, we saw, I think, sportier seats in the Model 3. There were some pictures, I think, that I saw. But for my surprise, they weren't perforated. So I wasn't sure if that's going to come to fruition. We I don't know, rumors. But I think now we're here to talk about the factories. So let's jump over to the next big one, of course, and that's let's talk about the Cybertruck ramp. This is the biggest one. We need the Cybertruck ramp. What's happening there? Because we've seen a lot on the parking lots.
We've seen a lot of excitement. It looks like they're around 30 to 40 a day coming out. Now, we don't know how consistent that is, but it looks that like pretty much every time the drone pilots go out, there's between 20 and 40 that you can see around the site, and that they're always in different places, suggesting they're doing more than just shuffling them. They are shipping them. And that's, I mean, you can just shuffle them, but that's not something Tesla has engaged in, despite what the haters and doubters might have led you to believe in 2018 and 19. They were very convinced that it was all a shell game.
The shuffling, that's so stupid. Okay, the line isn't working. Just shuffle the cars around, goddammit.
Just move them. Make them look like they're new cars. Ridiculous. And then you've got, so in Texas, you've got the Model Y line running. I believe it's only at 2 shifts. They have a lot of capacity there for additional Model Y. We'll get to that in a minute, but we're still talking about Cybertruck. So with Cybertruck, I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that there is any new bottleneck. There's no problem getting this piece or that piece. They had said on the earnings call that they have a couple weeks of battery packs made in advance. That's great, assuming a low run rate. And we know that they're working to dial in the second line for 4680s and an additional at least 5 lines to make more of them. So hopefully they've got the problems sorted out and they can get those cranked out more quickly. I am still confident that the obstacle to hitting, 100,000, 200,000 today is absolutely getting the battery packs. Tesla has said repeatedly, we're not battery constrained. Well, maybe not in total, but for 4680s, you're constrained. You need more. So that is the hesitation there. We've seen a lot more of these going out on the road. We've seen a lot more of these going to customers outside of Tesla. We have seen, and on the 18th, I'm going to be going out to an event in Portland where we will actually be allowed to get into the truck. And
Nice.
I will definitely be making a video of that. And I assume I will also be live streaming it because I got to get the word out. I need to know the questions as they happen. So we'll see on that. There is still unused space inside Giga Texas. Joe Techmeyer went out and did a early morning drone shot before sunrise so you can see in. And he saw areas where they are now developing parts of the factory for the first time on the southwest side, looking in through the second floor windows and into the mezzanine as well. You can see a lot of activity going on where they are adding more stuff, more capacity, more who knows what. So this speaks well for the possibility that Cybertruck could continue ramping, or maybe it is early tooling for parts for a compact. There is a lot going on there, and I expect it to be very exciting. By the end of the year, we'll see some great numbers on the Cybertruck. If interest rates correct even a little bit, we can see more Model Y sales coming out, and it looks all the pieces are there. Just need to get them moving a little bit more because there is spare capacity to build additional Model Ys.
Okay, interesting. But I want to touch on the Cybertruck here again. What's your estimate? Just a loose estimation. Nothing official. Disclaimer here. Don't cut this out of context, anyone. So what do you think, around which ballpark would you say on the end of the year they could pump out Cybertrucks? Maybe you have a loose number.
In total? Loose number. If I just had to guess, I'd say as of right now, between 88,999 and 89,001. Somewhere between there is my guess. So
please write in the comments when the time has come that you correct Brian on this number now. I mean, it's super specific, but
very specific. What happened is I had a chance to talk with Bob from Bob's Bibs and Bobs, one of my part supplier buddies, who makes a bib or bob for the Cybertruck, and his company was told to anticipate 89,000 units, 89,000 pieces of what he would not tell me, but it doesn't matter. 89,000 is the target. Now, it's far enough out that we could end up well below that, maybe 50,000. But it'd be, if we're already at 30 a day, I mean, that's a pretty good pace for February. And I think the pace is actually higher than 30. I think we're closer to 50 already. And so you can start to see the numbers increasing. And the real question is, when can they get the price down from 100,000 to 80,000? Because they are going through the reservations quite quickly to get to, I talked to someone a week or two ago whose reservation number was 144,000, and he was invited to configure. But you got to realize a lot of those people who ordered 10, 20, 100 of them may have only placed one of their orders. And a lot of people are in states that are still not eligible to configure, who will happily configure at 100,000 if you let them. I think they want to get through as many of the 100,000s as they can before they actually drop it to 80. And when it drops to 80, that's a big discount that will absolutely spur a whole lot of people into taking delivery.
When you talked about the reservation numbers or on which place in line he was, then I was a little bit sad because I'm around 87,000 or something like this because I have a reservation here in Europe. But who cares about Europe anyway? We don't know when the Cybertruck will arrive here, but it will at least arrive as a show car in Holzgerling near Stuttgart, where I'm going to visit as soon as this thing comes out. I'm going to cover this on my channel, of course, so beware of that. But I mean, it's interesting. How do you see the thing that Tesla did, the Founders Series? Was it stumping all the reservation holders and they were like, hey, what's happening here? I'm first in line. But yeah, how do you see that?
I haven't heard that sentiment myself. All the people I've talked to have said, I get it. It's brand new and the supply is limited. They'll charge what they can. So I think people get it. And I'd be very surprised to find someone who is a early reservation holder who is not also a shareholder. So they can see it through both lenses. They can see it as, I'm a little annoyed that they want a few extra bucks, except am I, because they haven't invited me to configure. And as a shareholder, I'd really like them to eke out that extra substantial amount of margin while they can, because the days of $100,000 Cybertrucks is numbered. We just don't know what that number is.
Yeah, and you've touched on a very interesting point as well, and that's the limitation of 4680 batteries. Okay, that's a big one because, for example, the Tesla Economist, for example, tracks the 4680 batteries very thoroughly, and it was furious. He really much stirred up a lot of beef with the Tesla community because he's kind of Tesla Q now, more or less. So he's very furious about this because he's disappointed about the actual production numbers of 4680s. How do you see that? Is there something, can Tesla ramp up? What's your view on that at least? I mean, of course, you're the man of the numbers. You're keeping track of production numbers, but maybe your own opinion, if that's allowed. So,
sure.
Yeah, maybe.
So I had a chance to attend a presentation by a Tesla employee named Jen Gowdy, who works at a service center in Oregon and was formerly a engineer at Cato Road, where the 4680 was developed. She put up a slide showing, that's me on the line in my yellow suit. We know she's actually there. When anybody asked questions that got a little too real, she would defer to Jordan Giesecke at the Limiting Factor saying, I just know that guy's got an inside source. I talked to Jordan. He does not have an inside source, but he was amazed. He was touched that his content is so good that surely you must have an inside source. I said, I know that Panasonic and really everybody has been working on the 4680 form factor, some of them to potentially provide cells to Tesla, and all of them have had to delay their release of these batteries. Is there something bedeviling about the form factor itself that leads to production delays? And she said, I cannot answer that, because if I gave you an answer to that, it would answer the question for all manufacturers, including Tesla, which to me says, yes, there's something about the 4680 that's tricky. Maybe it's that having additional length, additional, width, the tolerances have to remain tight, even over a greater area.
Process, or the dry process that they are using.
But the other manufacturers wouldn't be using a dry process. They'd still be using a wet process, and they are also delayed. Lee from Tesla Economist is very frustrated at the 4680 ramp. I think we all are. But Lee's frustrations have gone so far beyond that, and even beyond what's reasonable. I had a discussion with him when the quarterly numbers came out. He said, why on earth is stationary revenue so low when it's ramping, when the margins are supposed to be very high? And I said, because a lot of these projects, you don't get paid until they're switched on. If you look at Giga Texas, they put in Megapacks 8 months ago, and they have not yet been switched on. That's no fault of Tesla's. You wait for the permits, and permitting can take a while. Getting the infrastructure from the grid to handle something like that could be an obstacle that takes a substantial amount of time. Those revenues will show up at some point, at the appropriate time. I just don't know when that is. I fear that Lee may have dabbled in options again, and that is not a good thing to do. If he had just, when Tesla stock was coming back from 105 if he had just bought at 130, 150, 175. I do not believe he would have the same negative opinion that he holds today, which is irrationally strong, in my opinion. So, yeah. The 4680 ramp is going slow, but there are reasons to believe it could be improving, especially in terms of adding additional lines.
Yeah, could you see that they switch over to another battery technology? I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
Is it a reasonable?
Yes. If all of a sudden they realize, look, because they made 4680 Model Ys in Texas,
exactly,
but they also made 2170s. The question is, could you use 2170s and make a structural pack with it? And to me, the answer is yes. Why couldn't you? Maybe I don't see a reason why they couldn't just switch to a 2170 version. And also worth pointing out, on the charging curve, there was an update pushed out a few days ago to Cybertruck that should improve your charging curve. This is not new. When the 2170s were first released, they charged a bit slower than people expected until they had it all dialed in and they knew what the real capacity was without causing damage. And if you look at other companies that are a little more hesitant to hesitate, if you will, I was running some numbers. Lucid just published their 10K, and in it shows their warranty accrual is $5,250 a car. No, $8,979 is what they set aside per car that they sold last quarter. They expect $9,000 on average in warranty repairs. And part of the problem is people say their efficiency is amazing. It's not amazing. Those cars are uncorked. If you uncorked a Model 3 and only expected to get 10,000, 50,000 miles out of it, it'd be a screaming beast. You'd tear the internals apart if you let it. That's what some manufacturers are doing. Tesla's taking a slower approach, making sure the 4680s are sufficiently robust before they improve the charging curve.
Yeah, that's reasonable to do. So, yeah, thank you for that, diving into the deep end here, because that's important. I mean, the Cybertruck, of course, the production numbers are relying on the 4680 production. So, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. But let's see how it unfolds, and of course, they could switch and stuff like this. So interesting. You touched on that. So maybe we're going to go now from the Cybertruck to a different topic, the Model Y production at Giga Texas, and then we can switch over to the other factories, I think, because it makes sense, because Model Y isn't only produced in Texas. So, but first of all, let's dive into that in Texas.
So the Model Ys in Texas those are the ones that have front and rear castings. I don't know of another location that actually does that. It doesn't result in a weight reduction, unfortunately, but it does simplify the production process. It reduces the number of robots, as you know, and it makes it, in terms of, there's a thing called stacking errors. So when you start at the bottom of a car, every piece you put on it gives you a little bit more error as you go up. And by the time you get to the top, you might have some visible inconsistencies. Mega castings eliminates that. It reduces it. So how's Texas doing? The volume appears very strong. I haven't seen a concrete number in a while, but every time you look at drone footage, the cars are just flying out and they're going straight onto trucks. Some of them are taken to Hutto, Texas, where they're loaded onto trains and they disappear by rail. A lot of them go onto car hauler trucks for delivery. Who knows where? I don't know. I assume the entire South and Southwest. But the vehicles the production is going well, and there is a lot of headroom to expand production. And my only question is, are there sufficient batteries? And I believe the answer to that is yes. But if they have to shift their supply beyond U.S. borders, it would create issues with them no longer being eligible for incentives. So they're hesitant to do that. And we're waiting to see more manufacturers get their factories up and running. But building a battery factory is very complicated and takes a whole lot of time. And that makes it so that you can have a long lead time between having the capacity and being able to actually use it. But I think the bigger concern for Texas-built Model Ys is a softening of demand.
Do you think Tesla needs to pump out the like a refreshed Model Y soon? Is that important? I mean, people see the Model 3 Highline now and think like, yeah, the Model Y kind of looks old now or something like this. Some might say that. I personally think they should adapt the design. I love the design, but yeah, what do you think? Do you think Juniper is that, or did we already see Juniper with LED lights inside of the car?
So one thing we know, they were exporting Model Ys from Shanghai to Canada because Canada doesn't have the 28% import tax. It's got I think 12%, which is what any imported car other than from Mexico or the US would face. So a reasonable import tax. When the light refresh of the Model Y happened in Shanghai, where they just added some new, like the lights on the dash and some new elements to normalize them between 3 and Y, they stopped exporting them to Canada. So Canada is now served by Texas and Fremont exclusively, where it used to be Texas, Fremont, and Shanghai. So I think that they don't want anyone in North America to get any ideas that they should wait. A light refresh like that could absolutely happen. It could absolutely follow a month or two from now. You wouldn't necessarily see the rear screen. You probably wouldn't see the ventilated seats, but you'd get a little bit on the interior just because it makes it so you don't have to have two sets of parts laying around. That could absolutely happen quickly. Would a Model 3 refresh level refresh of the Model Y spur sales? Absolutely. I know a lot of people who have a Model Y who would trade it in a heartbeat to get the new one if it had those things, if it had the rear seats, if it had the softer ride, the quieter ride, the insulated glass throughout. And one thing that I imagine you'll mention in your review is in terms of cost savings, the giant single sheet of glass that goes over the passengers' heads in the 3 and Y in your car is 2 pieces of glass instead.
Yep.
That is a huge cost savings. A giant piece of glass like that is expensive. And that also makes your repairs more affordable. And then all they had to do was put an interior crossbar, which no one minds. I put my kids in the car for the test drive, and they didn't even notice it until I pointed it out to them. And then you put speakers on it to divide the zones into different and more isolated sound, refreshing
and more lights,
and more lights,
kind of.
And I think that refreshing the Model Y in that way would absolutely spur sales. The only question is it the right time? Do they have the engineering headspace to focus on it? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and it will cannibalize, of course, their production of existing Model Ys, and changing that in so many factories at the same time is pretty difficult, I think, to pull that off without crushing your sales. Because when on one continent it's going to be available, then they're like, God damn it, what are we going to do with the other Model Ys there? And people say, oh, no, I will wait to buy the Model Y now because I see in Europe, for example, like with the Model 3, there's a refresh coming. So maybe it's going to come to the US, but that's also, I think Tesla did that with a delay to not put it to the US at first because they still had Model 3s before that. So yeah, that's what
And changing over Shanghai with the Model 3 is going to be so much easier than changing over the globe on the Model Y.
Yeah, that also comes with the size. Then it's difficult to handle all those factories and all those factors of all those markets, because with the internet, of course, we know what's happening everywhere. So kind of.
And that's one reason I still see people saying, oh, the Juniper's coming out any day. And I say, it's not road testing yet. That tells me you're at least 3 to 4 months away from the time you see road testing. And it's not like having 10 times as many cars gets the road testing finished 10 times quicker. You still have to endure the duration.
Okay, so that's Model Y, long-winded Model Y topic here, but I think it's very important to get into the details, because people, when they see the news and see something about Elon doing stuff again, killing puppies or whatever he does all the time.
Well, he drinks their blood to maintain his youth.
It's not a big deal, guys. Come on. No, but you get the point. And now when we touch cloth, like you say, or touch base here, we kind of see what's happening with the actual numbers, and then we can predict kind of the trajectory of Tesla, what's happening there. So let's talk about Germany, because I think in Germany something happened with the Model Y line as well, like we've heard, because they pumped out maybe you want to tell the audience, but
Sure.
yeah.
They hit a peak run rate of 6,000 a week. That's almost 1,000 a day. And they could make even more. It appears that the supply chain is fully normalized once again. There was a delay because some parts coming from Asia got stuck in the Red Sea and had to take the long route around Africa like explorers of old. And that has been resolved. You wait the extra 2 weeks it takes, and now your supply chain is back up to speed. There's rumor, and I don't think it's rumor anymore, that Berlin will be expanded for production of the compact. We've seen where it's going to go. We've seen the preliminary permits. We've seen the community meeting about it. The north area there. And they've got it all cleared and ordnance removed, because that's a thing that you have to consider in former war zones.
Sadly, yes.
Sadly, yes. They've got a train station going in there for commuter rail. Everything is more or less ready for them to pounce at the appropriate time. We know that despite the rumors that Germany is going to take forever to build, they built it really quick. They built it about as fast as Texas built Giga Texas if you back out the 3 months of pandemic shutdown for construction workers. Yes,
record speed for Germany. That's insane. What Tesla? Yeah, it's absolutely insane what they did there.
The airport took 20 years, but that wasn't because construction took 20 years. It's because the politics took 20 years, as I understand it. Now there's a lot. So what's going on in Berlin? Maybe you have better answers than I do, but I see that they've got 6,000 a week would put them at a run rate of 350,000. We know the nameplate capacity is 450, I think. So that would be real close to where they are now. So there's a bit of room to expand production within the existing footprint. And I think they could increase it even further just by adding shifts. What do you think?
I also think it's very interesting to see now, because they hit this production rate, if you look at the incentives or what Tesla does to drive sales actually in Germany, and that's also a big deal maybe, because they offered 0% financing for company cars actually, and that's a big thing, because then some companies jumped already on that deal. And I've read also on X some people already said, oh, we're gonna tell that my boss immediately, because as you know, but probably the audience maybe don't know, because most of them are from the US. In Germany, actually, the ownership of cars is around 70% is actually company cars. So this means that for me as a worker, I get a kind of incentive. Oh, if you work for us, you're going to get a company car and stuff like this. That's how they bait you into slavery there somehow. To say it a little bit over-exaggerated. But that's what they do. And that's why this offers.
I can't leave. I've got a Model 3. Please.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. Actually, this point that I made has a background, because actually in Germany it's very difficult to have multiple jobs at one time. That's what they don't want actually. So they want to have you at one employer. That's the system that we have. So there are a lot of incentives to actually tie you to the company you work for. But with that comes also a lot of benefits, like the company car or something like this. So incentives or something like this. Yeah, to keep the worker happy. But so that's my take on it. So we've seen some driving sales factors there, and because then this is also hinting at the topic that I want to touch on the end of the episode, which is of course demand, because now we have great production numbers that it seems. But we're going to touch on that later. Brian, let's go to the next one that produces Model Ys. Do we have a factory still that produces Model Ys, or are we done for the audience? Well, maybe for someone who's not familiar with Tesla.
I mean, do you mean Shanghai? Because we touched on it just briefly. Yes. Okay, let's go a little more in depth on Shanghai. They're just a car producing machine is what they are. When you say the factory is the machine that builds the machine, this machine is well oiled and complete. If you look at some of the other ones, Fremont is a old factory that still works. It's not ideal, but it works. If you look at Berlin and Texas, there's still construction sites that happen to build cars. But Shanghai is done. All they do is little improvements here and there. Sometimes they'll take the factory down for a few days or a week to do a big change. I don't know how big of a change it is, but they immediately come back faster than before. And Shanghai is the crown jewel in the Tesla factory family so far. It's going to make 1 million cars this year, which would make it the most productive factory in the world, I assume. It is an absolute beast. In terms of Model 3, it appears they are back to as high a number as we could expect. And in terms of Model Y, they never slowed down. This week, I think they might be a little quiet because it's a holiday. But beyond that, I assume they'll come back refreshed and ready to get back to it and crank out a number of units hitherto unseen. So they will have an opportunity to do that. There's all kinds of markets that Tesla is still expanding into. And when it comes to anything really in that part of the hemisphere, Shanghai is going to be the factory where they build them. There are only a few exceptions, countries that do not want imports from mainland China. So, but those are the exception rather than the rule. And there are plenty of places that still want more that can't get them. So that factory, it's just solid. I don't even think about it. It's that one worker you have who's always there. You never need to double check his work. It's just working.
Yeah, and also one advantage that Shanghai has is also the factory of BYD right next door, right? They've built out there, didn't they? Or did I?
Oh, the battery factory?
Yeah.
Oh, that's CATL. Has a battery factory.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mixed it up. Sorry.
Very close. Within eyesight of the factory.
Yeah.
And that is coming online now, basically. And CATL famously makes a lot of LFP batteries. It could be possible that those batteries will be going into the Megapack factory that's going to be built. There was a groundbreaking ceremony where no ground was actually broken, and we don't know where it was, and the location is as yet unknown. It could be that factory is already tooling. It could be that they just moved into in Lathrop, that was mostly an existing factory. They just added on to it a little bit. So there's plenty of reason to believe that CATL factory is in some way directly related to Tesla. We know that Tesla buys batteries from all of the biggest manufacturers in the world, with the exception of SK Innovations and I think Samsung are the only two major battery manufacturers. LG batteries go into the cars from in Europe and some in China. The BYDs have been going into the 3s in China, the Panasonics in the US. There's, everybody, if you got some batteries, let me know, because we're in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's super interesting what's happening there. Also, you've touched on the point of import taxes and stuff like this, because Germany is fearing absolutely the Chinese competitors, especially the BYD Seal, for example, already came onto our markets here and stuff like this. And now they're discussing. That's why I also bought the Model 3 last year, because this year the German government or Europe wanted to raise actually the import tax on China. That's what they discussed. But if they will follow through is the other thing. But interesting thing to keep an eye on there, because they like the German car manufacturers fear the Chinese manufacturers absolutely, because every news outlet in Germany touched on this. Like, this is the big topic that China will take over our car market here, including, of course,
And I think it's more fear than reality. And you and I have talked about this. When a car is made in China, they go, oh my gosh, look at all these $20,000, $15,000 cars that are made. Those are not export grade vehicles, not in terms of safety, not in terms of comfort, not in terms of reliability. By the time you make a car that's sufficient quality and safety and durability for an export market, it's no longer a bargain basement car. If you look at MG is not appreciably cheaper than its European competitors. And the same is true with Xiaopeng and Li Auto and all of those. There was a great review I saw of I think it was the Xiaopeng 9 or 7 or whatever it was, head-to-head against the Model 3 refresh. And I'll be honest, in that review, I liked the styling of the Chinese car better. It was aggressive and cool. In terms of the 0 to 60, it beat the Tesla because it was designed to beat the Tesla. That's what it was designed to do. But then in terms of everything else,
the Tesla, so it's got to uncork the battery.
Right. They will. I mean, if we can uncork it just this much to beat it on the 0 to 60, on every other test, the Tesla came in a little bit better in terms of the usability, in terms of the interface, in terms of the experience overall. But the biggest one was the weight. The Chinese car that looks no different was 800 pounds heavier.
Jesus.
That's a lot.
Substantial. That's another car almost.
That should tell you that their engineering has not caught up. You can brute force any problem into a solution, and that's what they did. That extra weight will come down. But the car is not substantially cheaper than the Model 3. And if they're both about the same price, wouldn't you rather get one from a company that has more service centers, is definitely going to be around in a couple years for your warranty repairs, and has already sold millions of units, so you know it's going to last, or at least have a very good guess as to how its long-term performance is going to be. So the Chinese cars, once you factor in the shipping and the import tax and raising it to the level of quality that it needs to be for the European market, the fear is drastically overblown. And these companies are not even, most of them, are not even selling at a profit yet. So you got to remember, most of the parts of your car were not built by humans, but robots. And robots get paid the same in every country.
Yeah, that's true. And now also Tesla, being one of the few companies that actually localize production, they were kind of doing or starting this trend. I mean, BYD, for example, also wants to start now a factory in, I think it was Hungary, in Europe. And this is a good move because when they change the import tax laws, then, yeah, you cannot tax sales from Hungary, actually. So that's, it makes me hungry talking about Hungary now. But
really? Because Turkey does that to me.
Yeah, okay, perfect. But that's not a part of Europe yet.
No, but,
yeah, okay.
But it does.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, but it's food. Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, but you're right. I think it's kind of overblown, but for the Germans, I think it was a huge slap as a wake-up slap. Maybe they wake up now, who knows? I don't see the trend coming. I see also, still those e-fuel cars, they still rely on this technology. Now, this was in the news pretty funny. I just want to sidetrack here.
Is it the BMW one?
No, it's
okay,
even
good,
funnier.
Good.
They were discussing about those road trolleys of the cities where with on tracks. I'm not sure what the
tram.
Tram, yeah, the tram of it's also the word in German. The tram. Those to change those. How can we make them more complicated? How about we do a e-fuel version of this thing? But it's already working with those lines on top. It's stupid. It's electric already. Why would you change it back to a different technology?
What if we had a train on the train tracks, but we put rubber wheels on it? Why would you do that? No, to me, the two stories from last week that I thought were really crazy was Mercedes is now committing to electrification. Yeah. They're in, baby. And BMW said, let's go hydrogen, baby. We solved it. Hydrogen. Incidentally, I don't know if you heard, but a day or two ago, it was announced on the 10th that LA is losing every one of its hydrogen stations that's operated by Shell or Exxon. I think it's Shell. All of the hydrogen stations, of which there are, 7, are gone. They will be closed. And I knew they were losing money because, of course, they were. I just didn't think that there was a maximum amount of pain that they would not endure in order to keep up the pretense that this is not a terrible idea. So the hydrogen stations are gone, but BMW's all in, baby.
Yeah, but also on the Mercedes note, I've heard that they scrapped their dedication actually and deducted that a little bit. They're gonna focus also on leaving out the option, is what I've heard. But yeah, I'm not sure. I have to fact check that again. But who knows? But going back to the factories, because I think now we totally sidetracked. But I wanted to give that for context because this China conflict is also important for the European market. So you know that as well, you viewers. I mean, not Brian. He knows that, of course. He knows everything. That's why he's on my show. Now let's look at the other factories, because the last one that is still real, where we're still in the reality sector, where we can track it. Of course, the 25K car, we have to talk about that as well. But at first, I want to talk about the Nevada expansion. What's happening at that Nevada? What's going on there?
They have finally broken ground. It looks like what was originally expected to be a contiguous part of the factory is now going to be built just kind of next to it a little bit. And I think the reason for that is they want to be able to keep all the battery sections together, and they think the battery section is likely to grow more than they might have thought a year ago. So they have broken ground. The drone pilot out there is currently facing charges of trespassing for operating his drone, and there is no material basis for that. It's not a published protected site. He was within FAA guidelines. It's genuinely ridiculous, but that's what Tesla has decided to do, is pursue charges. So now he's flying from like literally out at the street, which is real far away. It is my expectation that the semi factory could be operational around the end of the year, but definitely by the end of Q1 of next year. Early volumes, too soon to say, but they have had an additional year to iron out the efficiencies needed, the engineering, get it all dialed in. So I am confident. I couldn't have said that with less confidence if I tried. But I am confident that by this time next year, we will see semis being delivered to customers other than Pepsi.
Okay. And we've also seen the results of some of the testing, the road testing they had. I mean, the efficiencies seem to be off the charts, especially because they can charge while being offloaded, which is awesome. And stuff like this is like a huge game changer. Imagine that you can like charge a semi while, fuel a semi while unpacking. Of course, some factories already do that. Of course, fill up the gas tank while they are unloaded, but yeah, it's super.
It's a lot easier to bring in the high voltage than it is to install certified fuel tanks underground. And there was also a bit of footage you might be able to find of a Tesla semi going down a fairly steep grade on just a sheet of ice, and it didn't lose traction because you've got all-wheel power traction control, which is something that no non-electric vehicle can handle.
They are on track. Do you think that the production of the semi will cannibalize the 4680s for the Cybertruck? Is that an issue we could talk about?
We could talk about.
How do you think?
There's no reason it should. It's already engineered around the 2170s. The 2170s are made next door in the building next door. The only reason to hesitate there would be for every one semi you sell, it's about 10 passenger vehicles that may not qualify for the incentives. So Panasonic needs to increase their output yet again, and that may be why they chose the location across the parking lot rather than touching the building, so Panasonic has additional space to grow into along with Tesla. We do know that Tesla has ordered equipment from CATL, presumably to manufacture their own LFP batteries. That would be interesting. That wouldn't necessarily impact the semi, except that if you're making LFPs domestically, those can go into the cars, freeing up 2170s that would otherwise be used in cars, prioritizing standard range plus over long range or performance. So I don't think the 4680 ramp has anything to do with the semi. I'm sure Tesla would have loved to have gotten the 4680 to the point where it's the miracle battery that goes in everything they make, but I think we're still a long, long way from that happening if it ever does.
So yeah, a little bitter there, but hey, you have to adapt, and that's what they do. And let's see how it's gonna work with the 4680s there.
There is one more factory. Two. I don't think we need to discuss Buffalo. Not much going on there. Buffalo, we can just touch on real quick. They are still making chargers. Those are prefab. They go out in great number, and very quickly they deploy super fast. But really, and they're going to be adding supercompute power out there where they will produce information, I guess, solutions. I don't know. But then there's the Megapack factory in Lathrop. I had an opportunity to talk with Bradford Ferguson from Rebellionaire, who has dedicated an outrageous amount of his personal time to tracking that location. Like he would fly out there and sit there with a drone pilot who would count everything he needs. I mean, he's very dedicated to this. It appears that Lathrop is at about 40% capacity, and that they will be at 50% maybe by the end of this quarter, and that they can grow into the other 50% throughout the year. And the bottleneck could be getting enough LFP batteries quickly enough, because each one of these is 4 megawatts or something outrageous. There's a lot of cells in there, but there's also a lot of margin from what we can tell.
Yep.
And I
30%.
asked him,
was it?
It depends how you look at it. Let's say look at the cost of it. Those batteries, even at $100 a kilowatt hour, you're only talking $400,000. So what else is there? Well, there's inverters. Those could be quite, let's throw another $100,000. You're at $500,000. Well, there's the case itself. That's less than 50,000. Let's say 100. You're only at 600-700. These sell, even at volume for 1.5 million. These could have, I think, a 50% margin. And the only reason the margins look so low is because there are so much deferred revenue where the company is waiting for the sales to finalize, for the actual installation to switch on, so they can send the final bill, get it going. And I think we're going to see an upside surprise on that in the next year or two as it becomes more clear just how much money there is in this division.
Yeah, okay, that's a good thing. I mean, also they expanded in Shanghai, the Megapack factory there, undisclosed location. Who knows what's happening there? It's like a
but
unicorn.
I expect that
Maybe
to come online.
One.
Yeah, I expect to see that this year. I expect to see something on that production even this year. Because Shanghai moves very quickly, and Lathrop was only about 6 months from announcement to production. So it's not as complicated as building a car. It has more right angles than a car, even than Cybertruck.
Yeah, but less very bad drag coefficient, I have to say. The Megapacks are not really, it's absolutely stupid to drive those things around. But talking about the
range.
factory,
Man.
the range is beautiful. But now talking about the last factory, and that would be, of course, Giga Mexico. What's happening there? We broke ground?
They're working on the infrastructure. Yes, permits appear to be in order. I don't know if we've seen final permit approval, but they've been submitted, which means we have the design. What we're seeing is infrastructure to widen the highway, to get the on-ramps and off-ramps in a more appropriate state for heavy construction. They also have to bring out internet, power, water, sewer. It is undeveloped land. And this isn't just to benefit Tesla. They hope for this whole area to become an industrial park, so everyone benefits. And these are going to be the best jobs around. For people with experience who already have pretty good jobs, these will be a little bit better. But if those people move over, that frees up these other jobs for people who need better jobs. So this is going to be a great boon to that. I've been trying to set up a trip to Monterey, but it's quite difficult finding contacts there. I would need more than just to visit the lack of construction site, though I have spoken to Adrian in the Hat about it, the drone pilot there. He'd be happy to take me out there. But I want to get into, there's BYD suppliers, there's all kinds of parts companies. I think Magna has some things going on down there. I'm not sure. I'd love to talk to more than I need to make the trip worthwhile, but I would love to get down there. So if anyone watching is in the Monterey area, by all means, let me know. I would be delighted to come and pay you a visit.
Let's do that, of course. So talking in the end of the episode maybe about the $25,000 car here, the production rates and everything. We cannot estimate when there's no factory. We only have rumors. We have something in Giga Texas that they are building something there that a drone pilot kind of looked into while going there in the morning. So we have loose estimations maybe, or maybe loose thoughts on the line or something like this. But we know that it's on the in development. So something is moving. But
so
how far are we, Brian?
How far? I think we're going to see something by the end of the year. Maybe not production, but something. And I think the compact is a much more known thing than the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck had to use new materials in a new way. It had rear steer that Tesla had never done. It had a lot of things to figure out for the first time. The only new thing I think the compact will have is brake-by-wire. And
Yes.
that is one obstacle in an otherwise unremarkable process. Now, they could use a bizarre skin for it, stainless, plastic, carbon fiber, whatever. They could use that, but I don't think it would present the same challenges that we saw with the Cybertruck. The batteries for the Cybertruck had to be all new. I don't think this is going to use all new batteries. I think it's going to use LFPs or something known, available, and cheap. So I think the design could be awfully dialed in already, if not absolutely dialed in, and that it's now just a question of how quickly can we get the battery factories to support this production up and running and to build the factory to coincide with that. Because if the factory's done a year before the battery supply will keep up, you're not using capital efficiently. And we are seeing a lot of talk of battery companies wanting to build in the US and Mexico so that every vehicle will qualify under those rules. We don't know who the balance of the Senate, Congress, and White House effective very, very soon. And if the Senate or Congress or the president is committed to ending the Inflation Reduction Act, that creates a huge amount of uncertainty for the battery companies who stand a lot to gain by building. If I was a battery company, I would be very hesitant to invest my $2 to $10 billion not knowing what the situation is going to be for these products moving forward. So that's business doesn't like uncertainty.
Absolutely. So let's see what's happening there. Of course, we touched on Giga Grünheide or Berlin, that they expand something in the north. We know that, it's plausible to have the $25,000 car in Europe, one of the biggest target markets for this vehicle. So it makes sense to build it there. So yeah, it's a no-brainer that they're gonna do that. But which one will be first? Giga Texas, then Giga Mexico, and then Giga Berlin, or Giga Shanghai and then Giga Berlin? What do you think? I mean, they already announced a kind of list. Yeah, in the
I have an answer. So Texas will be first. It's easier to finish the engineering in the place where the engineers already are rather than shipping them off to Mexico. I believe following right behind it is going to be Berlin before Mexico. And the reason is Berlin is already graded. Berlin is already flat. The site in Nuevo Leon is on a rocky slope. The ground remediation before they can start building could be 4 months, 5 months. And Berlin, you've seen it. I mean, we can call it green field because it's flat and all that's out there is weeds. Just give it a quick mow and you're ready to build. They know what the only concern there is what kind of foundation they can use because they can't go very deep, but they know how to do it with the floating raft concrete, giant blocks basically that just disperse the load. And it apparently worked in phase 1 of the factory. So I really think Berlin is going to be second. China is still a big question mark. They could have already built the factory or have it 80% done and we wouldn't know. They're very good about keeping quiet about what's going on in Shanghai. So Shanghai could be second or third, and then Mexico would be the final piece of the puzzle. Okay,
so interesting. A new arrangement of this list. I totally agree there. It makes sense to get it, produce the car where it's possible to be produced. How about that? And that makes a lot of sense that you just said here. What's your thoughts in the comments here? How is your list? Is it different? Do you have a different arrangement here? Or does Brian actually knows it all? Should he be called Dr. Know-it-all now? Or what do you think? But for the end of the episode, I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on is everything we talked about is cool and all, but now we talk about the big thing, the demand problem. Do you think there will be a demand problem with Tesla ramping up their factories everywhere? I mean, what's the possibility? How many cars could they produce at the end of the year? Or what's your estimation? Are they on track to produce 20 million cars at 2030? Or what's your estimate there? Kind of. Maybe you can touch on this.
2024 I see as a gap year. There's not a lot of new capacity coming online. Yes, they could sell some more 3s, but they're kind of maxed out. They could sell a lot more Ys, but it's already the best-selling car in the world, and you kind of run out of headroom to sell more when you're already at number 1. There is a limit, and we may have reached it. If you go out as far as 2030, the compact is expected to be the highest volume vehicle by a significant margin. If you look at just Shanghai, that factory makes 1 million cars. The compact is expected to be much simpler to build and easier to manufacture, using fewer atoms, fewer parts, less batteries, less everything. That tells me that the target run rate for each factory is 2 million. We already know, let's ignore Texas because it's not full size. Just Mexico, Shanghai, and Berlin, that's 6 million units. Could they actually make that many? Yeah, why not? If you look at the global mix of products, compact cars are huge, just not in the US. Just not in the US.
That's true.
They fit the roads. People don't mind them. They like the extra efficiency. They're easier to park. They have a lot of benefits that don't necessarily apply when you live in a suburban neighborhood in California. But they will increase. So, and that's before we talk about any other factories, before we consider India or Canada or Japan or Thailand or any of the other places that believe they are on the short list. And these are all places where Tesla has already reached out, already established relationships in some regard. The Mexico factory would have fantastic access to 50 countries, I think, with free trade agreements, which is twice as many as the US has. So all of South America, all of Asia Pacific could get the Mexican built Tesla. And it's entirely possible to build a different compact in each one of those markets and just ship them around the world. Or make it simple enough that you could build 3-4 different models based on a sufficiently shared platform that it wouldn't be cumbersome to have one line making 2 different vehicles like we've seen other manufacturers do, like how the Taycan and the Audi are made on the same line, even though they're different cars. It's not impossible. So I think exceeding 6 to 8 million by 2030 is very likely. Hitting 10 million is likely. Hitting 20 million, there is a non-zero chance, which is better than we can say for any other manufacturer, because for them, there is a 0% chance because they do not have, if in 2026 demand for Toyota quadrupled, they couldn't make 20 million by 2030. They have no plans to do it, and it takes time. So they have the best chance of 20 million by 2030 of any car company.
I mean, that's an answer. So maybe you also, the audience can write that down in the comments as well, what they think here. But yeah, Brian, how do you think that all of this is coming into fruition because of the demand? I mean, the demand is stifled now. What's happening? Do you think it's tied to maybe the interest rates that are pretty high right now, or what do you see? I mean, Tesla is set up for low interest rates. I mean, if those come down, they have the capacity actually to back it up, especially with the Y. I mean, well, how do you see that? Interestingly,
Tesla's managed to uniquely posture themselves to take advantage of a lot of unusual circumstances over the years. When the shutdown hit, Tesla was the only car company that failed to cancel all their orders. And what that meant is you're now at the top of the list. You're number one priority when we turn back on. And when they did, everyone else was scrambling. Oh my gosh, there's no parts. Buddy, there were parts. You canceled your order. They laid people off because they didn't know. I mean, if you kept, sorry. So that was a unique bit of opportunity. Another one was all the vehicles that they thought would be in the robotaxi fleet by 2021, the cars they were selling in 2018 and 19 that were coming off lease with no option to cash it out, Tesla turned around and sold them at new car prices. They made a ton of money, and that was a one-time kind of deal. That will not happen again. But I see the excess capacity in Berlin and Texas as a loaded spring. If interest rates come down, they can crank up production quickly. And I see building out for the compact to be the same thing, where they're going to put in all this capacity. It's going to land just as batteries are getting ready, and there will always be a hunger for a cheaper car. That's as long as it's compelling. And you know, Tesla will not make a car unless it's exciting, fun, safe, compelling, efficient. And it's going to be pretty bonkers, especially if, as the compact lines are coming online, interest rates are still favorable. It'll allow people in markets who normally would look at a used Lexus or Mercedes to look at a new Tesla instead, especially when you look at countries like Brazil, who have a wealth of hydroelectric power that makes electric rates affordable and oil rates less exciting.
Yeah, that's like really big points you pointed out here. How do you see the biggest danger of having like this huge ship of having these many cars? Is there a huge risk that, oh no, when the demand stifles, I mean, what they gonna do? Do they just slow down production, lay off people? What's the strategy there?
It depends. On layoff people, they might just move them to another division. Tesla's always looking for the best people. If they already have someone who's the best people, they'll keep them. They'll just put them somewhere where their talents are better utilized. In terms of, if the question is, could they accidentally overbuild capacity for the compact? The answer is, in my opinion, no. Because what they would do in that case is have the factory, but only running one line instead of 4. Instead of 2. And that would allow each factory to remain operational, each supply chain to remain intact, and it would just be loading the spring. We've got everything here, we're ready to go, and we can crank it out when the time is right.
That sounds absolutely reasonable, and Tesla has the unique point here that they can shift. For example, if the LFP batteries, for example, I mean, they need them for the Semi. They need them, make a switcheroo, say, okay, this line is done. Yeah, we're going to shift over to that one. So this unique position that Tesla is in is unprecedented actually in the industry if you compare it like in the EV industry, in the EV space. So yeah, it's a lot to fall back on actually. And also, I mean, they have the Giga factories as well. If they have spare batteries, what they're going to do? Oh, let's just crank up this division and the Gigapacks will be sold because this saves a lot of money for whole states. Actually, they could just order those things and save the capacity there. It's awesome. It's pretty good. So thank you very much, Brian, for being on and doing this long-winded episode about all the factories, because we have to get into the nitty-gritty sometimes, touch concrete, like I say, or touch cloth, like you say. And yeah, maybe please, everybody follow Brian, of course. He has a new channel, actually, Futuraza. It skyrocketed. He had it online for a few weeks yet now. No, it's MyTeslaWeekend. He rebranded himself. But maybe you want to talk about your stuff that's coming up or your things for the audience to uncover.
Well, there's so much great stuff going on all the time in different products. I had a chance to go to CES recently. I had 2 dozen videos about that. I rebranded MyTeslaWeekend because I found that a lot of people wouldn't talk to me. Other car companies, but even people just in industries. Battery people didn't want to talk to me. They were afraid something I would say would be framed as in a Tesla light that might not make that they might not like. So it's the same
and
channel.
anyone who knows your channel knows that you're pretty unbiased actually, and also criticize Tesla when they are when it's totally necessary to criticize on points where they need to be or have to be criticized. So I think you're very unbiased. That's why it makes sense to rebrand your channel. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in there.
No, that's right. I've had people say, "Oh, you can't be honest about Lucid or Nikola or Neo because you have Tesla in the name." And I say, I've criticized Tesla. I've praised BYD and Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz today even. So the lack of bias was always there. I just needed a name that reflected it. So what's coming up? Well, I've got a big trip coming up in May. Maybe you can talk about that, and another one in June. I'd love to hear what you got going on.
Tesla Takeover Europe is going on in Austria, and one of the main men, of course, needs to be there, and there's, of course, you. And wait a minute, you need a driver. How about I drive you there? So, yes, we both will go to the Tesla Takeover in Europe there in Austria, which is pretty awesome. So make sure to check out that. It's going to be there soon. You've already said in May, of course, and that's where we're going to head there. So, yeah. What else? What else? Is there something up? Maybe you can talk about this. Yeah.
Well, in June, the Tesla Owners Club of Michigan is hosting their annual event on Father's Day weekend. The 15th and 16th will be a huge event at Heritage Park, Heritage Landing, I think it's called, a new venue this year that we got an opportunity to speak at. So it turns out I was able to convince Jan to fly out and be one of our speakers. Lars from Best in Tesla will be there, and a whole bunch of names you'd recognize. Dr. Know-It-All will be there. So we're going to have a fantastic
is Dr. Doesn't Know-It-All also there? Oh, okay, sadly not. Okay, sadly just someone. Yeah.
Yeah, I love John.
He's great. Absolutely.
He's great. And so if you're going to be in Austria in May or Michigan in June, come and meet both of us. We can each sign one boobie, and you'll be able to get those tattooed for posterity.
Yeah, sadly, also looking at my channel statistic, I think it's going to be dudes. But yeah. So
I didn't say it wasn't.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So thank you very much, Brian, for being on. As always, it's a pleasure to have you on. So now you've been filled in with all this great information here, you guys. And please follow Brian, of course, on Futuraza. But of course, you are already followers of him. I'm just the small channel that's scraping up all the subscribers of your channel. So see you then. And of course, yeah, thank you very much. And there's one last thing to say to the audience now, and that's goodbye, everybody.
Wasn't this episode awesome? Let's accelerate the pace of innovation by subscribing to TeslaFix. It is my absolute favorite channel on the whole interwebs.